Welcome to this Forest and Bird History Talk. My name is Anthea McClelland, and I'm the current chair of Forest and Bird Manawatu branch. And you're all very welcome to take this journey of 100 years of forest and bird history. Maestro, the slides, please. Well, this is just the opening slide for Forest and Bird, and it's a beautiful shot of a tui, which has become the iconic bird of Forest and Bird. Who are Forest and Bird? Well, we're the oldest conservation society in New Zealand, and it was formed on the 28th of March 1923 by Captain Val Sanderson, and it was formed in Wellington, and it was known as the Native Bird Protection Society of New Zealand, and later down the track it became Forest and Bird. Its first objectives were to advocate and obtain the efficient protection of our native birds and a bird day for our schools and unity of control of all wildlife. And you will find this theme throughout the talk. Captain Val Sanderson was very, very keen to involve children in the conservation because he felt that that we needed to pass on through the children the conservation thoughts and actions. He also believed that Pākehā could learn from what we would now call Matarangi Maori, and in 1934 Bishop Bennett agreed to become the Maori representative on the executive. In articles published between 1920 and 1930, he created a full list of Te Reo bird names, and it cost 5 shillings for adults to join and 1 shilling for children. And 5 shillings was approximately 50 cents in today's money. So who was Captain Val Sanderson? Well, he was a visionary, and he lived the remaining, really lived in Paikokariki. He was born in Dunedin on the 8th of February 1866. He served briefly in the South African War and went to the training camp in Egypt in World War I, but he didn't actually see action. In 1921, he revisited Kapiti Island and found that the reserve areas remained unfenced, with sheep and goats continuing to strip the bush. He once said, give nature a chance and she will repair the damage. His successful 1920s campaign to restore Kapiti Island proved it was possible. He moved to Paikokariki in 1930 and lived there until his death, and his house still exists if you go to Paikokariki. He was actually initially the honorary secretary of the newly formed society, and he only became president in 1933. He spent 3 days a week on society business and remained in command right up to his death on the 29th of December 1945. Now, these are a couple of curiosities. The upper photograph is Captain Sanderson's typewriter. On this typewriter, Captain Sanderson used to type his letters, petitions, and submissions. And in Paikokariki earlier this year, at a centennial celebration, the Sanderson family actually donated this typewriter or gifted, to Forest and Bird to put in their archives and to look after it. And the bottom photograph is actually receipt number 170. But our archivist, Michael Pringle, who has been working diligently researching all the history in the National Archives and online of the forest and bird history, actually tried to find the number 1 receipt, which was issued to a Mr. Arthur Lee Hunt. But sadly, in Mr. Hunt's archives, this receipt wasn't to be found. So we do have an early one of Mr. George Thatch, which was issued on the 28th of October 1923 for the princely sum of 10 shillings. So it had gone up from the first amount. And the receipt, as you may be able to discern, was actually signed by Captain Sanderson himself as the honorary treasurer. Right, now we're just a few early posters that were actually out and about. The one on the left of the screen was published in 1923 and featured the Society's first logo in the top left, and that was probably the first time the TUI appeared. The other images on there are all things that have been found in the archives. Now, he also was very keen to involve Maori, and he actually published a poster for Maori, and which was it was in Te Reo, and it was published in 1924. It highlighted the decline of the nation's unique bird life from the loss of forests and hunting. And so he was very, very keen, as we've already said, to do this. And he published several articles about Maori as conservationists in forest and bird journals during the 1920s and 30s. He was instrumental, as we've said earlier, in appointing a Maori representative, Mr. Bishop Bennett, who sat on the executive and was also co-patron alongside the Governor-General of the day. Now, this image here, the little girl in that poster, is actually one of Captain Sanderson's children, Ruth Sanderson. He had 2 girls, and Ruth is one of them on this, and she's been superimposed on this beautiful photograph of the bush behind her. And it was used in magazine advertisements and was posted in railway stations in the North Island. And it said, "Save New Zealand for your children. When you save your forests, you save the soil and children." And you know, it's very relevant today, I think. And it says at the bottom, "Save New Zealand for your children." Here we have Forest and Bird Protection Society linking soil health with saving forests, and ultimately New Zealand for the sake of its children. Now, Forest and Bird over the years has had a century of reinvention, and the early focus was securing stronger protection for native birds, advocating for new scenic reserves, and raising the alarm about introduced pests and erosion. I don't think that very much has changed, actually. So in the 50s, it played a pivotal role in establishing a string of national parks and helped to pioneer offshore island restoration. In the 70s, of course, a lot of people would remember the huge fight over the raising of the Manapuri Dam in the South Island. And they managed to organise petitions throughout the whole of New Zealand, which were presented to Parliament, and as a result, the Manapuri Dam wasn't raised as originally planned. So really, a lot of these changes have evolved, and the society has increasingly focused on marine, legal, mining and climate issues, while also carrying out practical conservation projects across Aotearoa. Now, the early milestones, and there are quite a few. We go right back to 1923, when the society was formed as Native Bird Protection Society. Then in 1934, it changed the name to Forest and Bird Protection Society of New Zealand. And as you can see, going right through to 1963, several milestones were actually achieved, and Forest and Bird helped to achieve. And then in 1963, the name was changed to Royal Forest and Bird Protection Society of New Zealand. Now, this is a photograph of some of the petitions that were presented to Parliament with the boxes stacked high. And in 1970, they delivered these to 206 2,604 907 signatures. That's a lot of signatures, bearing in mind New Zealand's population wasn't anywhere near the size it was in 1970. And then by 1972, the fight was won and Lake Manapuri was protected. Now, this is more milestones. As I say, throughout the years, Forest and Bird has definitely been instrumental in helping to create national parks and also fighting to protect the environment. For example, in 2010, national parks were protected from mining, and the Mokahini River saved from a hydro dam in 2012. And then another milestone going on to with Captain Sanderson's wanting to involve children in Forest and Bird. And in 1988, the Kiwi Conservation Club was created, and this is the very first poster that was created. And then over the past 20 years, we have done an awful lot. For example, like establishing the Predator-Free New Zealand movement, campaigning for landscape scale restoration, helping to establish a string of marine reserves, conservation parks, and we've also had a string of precedent-setting legal successes, including going all the way to the Supreme Court to stop the Ruta-Hangawa Dam. Please excuse my pronunciations. And more recently, the Motiti decision that established for the first time that the RMA could be applied to coastal waters to protect local taonga. Now, our history wasn't just in what we have done in the environmental conservation space. In all our publications, we have had quite a few different reincarnations. And in 1923, as I think I pointed out earlier, the tui made its first appearance, and it has changed shape, colour, all sorts of things over the last 80 years. Why did the Society choose a tui? Perhaps for all the reasons we treasure them today. It's noisy, bossy, boisterous, beruffled, and highly visible wherever it chooses to live. So I'm going to show you a few slides of the history of frequent reinventions. There have been 11 changes of logo, 4.5 changes of our name, at least 10 changes of our aims and objectives, and 23 changes to the style of its magazine banner. Some of the early logos. Okay, the first one in 1923 looks like a tui. You get fast forward to 1924, and guess what? They decided they were going to ditch the tui and have a kiwi, but it really wasn't very fast-lived as an icon bird for Forest and Bird. So in 1936, it went back to a tui, and as you can see, it turns black. But they didn't like that, so also in 1936, earlier, they'd actually had the tui as white. And the 1940s and 50s, it's debatable whether it's a tui at all, because it actually has a resemblance of a magpie. Okay, right, now this was the very first magazine that we ever produced, and as you can see, this was probably the one and only time that the Kiwis was on the front cover of any publication of Forest and Bird. And this one was published in 1924. So I'm going to run through some of the different colours and objectives of the Forest and Bird Society. In 1933, they produced the first coloured cover, and each time they seemed to tweak the aims and the objectives of the society. So in 1931, we not only were the Forest and Bird Society, but we were also and became an incorporated society. Right, in 1933, this is another coloured version, and this shows you the first time that we actually became Forest and Bird. And again, the inclusion enlisting the natural sympathy of our young. Then again, in December 1934, the legal name changes to Forest and Bird Protection Society of New Zealand Incorporated. And again, the objectives of the society changed. In 1951, the society refines its objectives again. And on the front, you can actually see a lovely photograph of a whakapapa and also this crazy magpie logo that we had at that time. Then in 1963, we had a royal charter granted. So we legally changed, and this was on our 60th birthday, it legally was changed to the Royal Forest and Bird Protection Society of New Zealand Incorporated. And that's quite a mouthful. And it was actually difficult sometimes to write it all. Okay, now in 1973, the logo was used, this particular logo was used during our Golden Jubilee. And this time the tui actually looks like a tui. And that was used for quite some time. And it was also the first time that the ampersand was used in the Forest and Bird name. Okay, in 1989, guess what? The society aims change again. And we've started to use the shorter name of forest and bird, which is very much easier to say. And sometimes I shorten it when I'm doing publications to F and B because it's simpler again. Then, would you believe it, in 1994, we have yet another logo. This time the TUI has been stylised with either side and carry flowers either side of the TUI. And the Kiwi Conservation Club also has a new logo. Now, in 2005, very, very sadly, the first woman editor, Helen Bain, of the Forest and Bird magazine, was very, very tragically died in a horse riding accident. But the last thing she actually did for Forest and Bird was take the magazine to a new level of content, look, and it felt very, very much sleeker and more modern. And we were very, very sad to lose Helen, not only as a member of Forest and Bird and me personally as a friend. Guess what? We change again, and this radically, we lose the TUI. This is in 2009, a new logo and tagline. And from now on, the tree, alongside the words forest and bird giving nature a voice, will actually become our official logo, and that is what it is today. The tree means a tree of biodiversity. The native flora and fauna make up its branches. The speech marks represent forest and bird giving nature a voice, and it's used sometimes, I can see in publications that the speech marks dot out from the tree and then there is some statement. And the magazine gets a makeover too. But then in 2015, they really didn't do an awful lot, but they did include Tireo underneath forest and bird, and that means giving nature a voice. And we still have that, and this is our logo right up until today. Now, in 2017, another arm of Forest and Bird was formally created, and this was the Forest and Bird Youth. And they were formally created in 2017. Up until then, there had been one or two branches that had a Forest and Bird Youth arm. But so in 2017, it was actually formally created, and now there are branches of Forest and Bird Youth throughout New Zealand. And each, different areas, the Forest and Bird Youth, and more groups are joining the organisation. And it is their mission to take action for nature as youth, with youth, and for youth. Guess what? We've got some different logos. Except there's a different one for the Kiwi Conservation Club, and if you look very closely in the KCC, you can see a bird and a fish. The bird looks a little bit like a takahe, but I'm not sure. And then you've got the logo for Forest and Bird Youth, and this Force for Nature was created specifically for our centennial. Now, on the 5th of April, the New Zealand Post very kindly issued a set of commemorative stamps to celebrate 100 years of Forest and Bird. And as you can see, there is a selection, are the 4 stamps that were created. And they're beautiful, they really are. And they were drawn by, or created by an artist, a well-known Wellington wildlife artist, Rachel Walker. And I'm not sure whether they're still available in the post offices, but they were certainly something somebody might like to collect. You can always contact the Forest and Bird shop to see whether they have some available. Now, we go back full circle to the logo from the beginning, and it's also the force of nature. And we will be celebrating throughout 2023 different events around the country for Forest and Bird. And again, I would like to thank the Stout Trust for helping fund the Forest and Bird Force for Nature History Project. Because it's not just the talk that I have given, but next year they will actually be publishing a book, which I think will be a very, very interesting book on the history, with stories of different members that have been in the society, what they've done, and I'm looking forward to seeing the book when it's actually published next year. I should also like to acknowledge, and I could not have put this PowerPoint presentation together without the help of Caroline Wood, who is the Forest and Bird History Project Manager, and oh, by the way, she also publishes the Forest and Bird magazine, which you have all probably seen, read, and there's some really, really lovely articles in it. Also, Sarah Slatherthwaite, she is the project manager for the centennial celebrations, and she's been hard at work making sure that all the celebrations around the country go off, hopefully without too many problems. I did attend one in Paikakariki, where they celebrated, and we met the Sanderson's family, and it was lovely to we also cut a birthday cake, which was also very nice. And then I cannot thank Michael Pringle enough. He is part of the Centennial Project team. He has, as I said earlier, digging into the National Archives and has helped me a lot on this project to find the posters, the information, and also making sure I wasn't giving you any incorrect facts. And also I would like to thank all the different authors of the articles that I have received from National Office, and I have cherry-picked a lot of the information in this PowerPoint presentation from them. Thank you very much for coming today, and I will leave you one message. Our message is one of hope, reflecting on the power of people to come together to restore nature back to abundance and restoring its mana and well-being.